A lot of people start prepping a year before the pageant, and they're like, man, I've DM'd and I've reached out online and these different things, and they thought that there was something wrong with them because the directors weren't reaching back out to them. But in reality, it had nothing to do with the candidate. It had everything to do with the system is like completely broken. Hey everybody, Coach Megan here, and today we're going to be talking about what the heck is happening in Miss USA. For those of you guys who don't know, I competed for Miss USA 3 years ago now. Can't believe it was 3 years ago. And man, Miss USA has been through really a ton of evolution ever since Donald Trump sold it in 2015. I was doing some more research because if you don't know what's going on right now, not a single state has a state pageant date in the USA system. Some were supposed to happen as early as September of last year, and they just haven't happened. And so Layla Rose is individually interviewing every single state director, executive director, and conglomerate. If you don't know, also in USA how it works, there are fewer executive directors per state, and we do more conglomerates. Like for example, here in the Midwest, we have the Venata brothers, the Vambros, and they own and operate 6 pageant states from Nebraska to Oklahoma, Illinois, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri. And they're awesome. So shout out to John and Jason. So as far as I know, like even when you pass that test, like John and Jason passed the test, they still, like Miss Nebraska was supposed to be 4 weeks from now. Today's January 8th that I'm recording this. And it was supposed to be February 10th, and now all of a sudden it's just off the website. So if you're wondering, and this is interesting because I even had clients that wanted to work with us from various states like last year, right? Because a lot of people start prepping like a year before the pageant. And they're like, man, I've DM'd and I've reached out, I've done the contact us page online and these different things. And they thought that there was something wrong with them because the directors weren't reaching back out to them. But in reality, it had nothing to do with the candidate. It had everything to do with the system is like completely broken. So just as a recap, how it normally works, you reach out, and because pageants numbers are not where they need to be or where they want them to be, for the most part in most states, unless you're in, a couple states where this is not the case, they respond decently quickly. Unless you're in a state that is so underpopulated that they just, the directors aren't checking it very often, like checking the emails because they maybe have, 5-10 people a year that compete. But if it's not one of those states, they typically get back to you pretty quickly, and then you fill out a form to basically show that you are reasonably within the confines of somebody that could do well. And it's a pretty low bar, to be honest, which is good because it gives more people an opportunity to compete and to try it, right? And not just like judge a person by somebody like putting something in for the first time when they maybe don't even know what to put in terms of their application. But you'll get accepted, which I very highly doubt they ever reject anybody because numbers are down, like I said. And then you get to compete, right? So that's the system. It's not that hard. You have a pageant date. Usually they have pageant dates by like a year in advance because they have to with venues and stuff. And then you're off to the races, right? So that's not the case this year. In fact, I have a statement from the Pacific Northwest board that has been the directors for 21 years. They said, Pageants Northwest, dear contestants, families, and supporters, Pageants Northwest has been producing the state pageant qualifiers to Miss USA and Miss Teen USA for the past 21 years and have included Idaho, Oregon, Montana, and Washington since basically between 2002 and 2015 is the latest, till now. We love serving the contestants, their families, and the community. It's a role we admire and cherish as we've mentored more than 1,000 women. We love the brand about empowering all women. It's been no surprise to anyone that we have been working diligently on our 2024 state pageant since November of 2022, securing sponsors, appearances, media interviews, and so on. In addition, we want to give our 2023 state queens as much time to prepare for the national pageants. We are so proud of all of our contestants and are grateful for the support of their family and friends. Layla Rose, the new Miss USA president, and VVV Entertainment are putting a hold on all 2024 state pageant qualifiers to the Miss USA and Miss Teen USA until further notice, which obviously includes our Washington pageant, which had been scheduled for August 19th and 20th, of last year, by the way, 2023. Idaho on September 9th and 10th, and Oregon on October 20th and 21st. We understand how surprising this unexpected update may be, as we were all looking forward to kicking off the 2024 State USA pageant season. As soon as we hear more on resuming the Washington, Idaho, and Oregon state pageants, we'll be sure to let you know. In the meantime, your tickets and or live streams will still be honored, and they will be transferred to the new dates as soon as we hear when those new dates have been approved. So maybe I read that wrong. Let's see. We want to give our 2023 state queens as much time to prepare for the national pageants. Yeah, but still, basically everything's been put on hold. And typically USA state pageants, some of them start in the fall of the year before, but typically, USA happens in the fall/winter of the regular year. And then Miss Universe shortly after that, usually a couple weeks after that. And then state pageants normally start in January. And then if a state has several pageants, like Vanbrose, for example, I think Nebraska was almost always the first one. And it would go, Nebraska was in February, and then they'd have another one in March, another one in April, another one in May, and maybe one or two of those states. Because months. They'd get 6 pageants done in 4 weeks, 4 months. And actually 12 pageants, because there's the teens as well. Highly recommend, by the way, competing in a Vanbrose pageant. Have nothing but fantastic things to say about my directors. They are just wonderful and respectful and fight for you and let you be your authentic self. And I honor you guys. You guys are so awesome. And we had the best class ever. It was so fun, despite being during a pandemic year. So shout out to all my Vanbrose girls, because you guys, we were a sisterhood. My goodness, when you were walking through a pandemic, you needed each other for sure. And they're awesome. So that's what's going on. That's the current situation. Okay. Literally nobody knows when they're going to compete, but I wanted to kind of give this overall perspective, because if you're new to pageants, I have people in my DMs literally every day saying, I'm competing for Miss USA and it's my first pageant and a state title. And I'm like, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. And I keep sharing the same information. So I just wanted to do an episode on this, because I wanted you to know that you're not alone, because I don't want you to think that there's something wrong with you of why maybe a director isn't reaching out to you, or why they don't have a clear plan of what day things are happening. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the leader of the Miss USA organization. So I like Layla. I think she's doing her best. I think, she is cleaning house in some ways, because obviously she's individually interviewing all of the directors, which in the ideal is a great idea, obviously, because we've had corruption in the past in Miss America and Miss USA. But I don't know about y'all, it just feels like so many changes are happening in pageants that it is hard to keep up with. This week is Miss America. We had several of our clients do their interviews yesterday and today, and luckily they went really well. We had a client win another state title this weekend, which is awesome. But last thing I want to say about this, so why is this happening? Well, if you look at a timeline, which I have in front of me, okay? If you look at a timeline, like I said in the beginning, Miss USA has honestly been tumultuous since 2015. So, like 'em, hate 'em, this is not the point, but former President Trump owned Miss USA for a very long time. And again, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, he owned it from 1996 to 2015, so almost 20 years. Yes, math. And it was on NBC. It was successful, right? It was something that, how many of you guys know, we all grew up watching. He put the money behind it if it needed to be, and it was super successful. And then in 2015, because of something that he said allegedly while running for president that somebody didn't agree with, they basically went into a settlement because he sued people for defamation, and then they entered into a settlement. But he ultimately let go of the franchise while he was running for president. But again, like him or hate him, he knew how to run a business, and I have personally talked to people that were title holders during that time, and I'm just telling you, they loved it. They didn't have any complaints. So I can't speak for everybody, obviously, but, I do respect the fact and miss the fact that pageants used to be full-on pageants, and it was about being feminine and embracing parts of ourselves that a lot of times I think now pageants have kind of muted. Now, I do think that this last year's representation of Miss USA was awesome. So congrats to Layla Rose on that. I think she did a great job. I thought it was beautiful, and so was Miss USA, Universe in many ways. So, and I also disagree with obviously some of the things from 1996 to 2015, like early 2000s when everybody looked like they had an eating disorder. And I don't say that lightly. Like there was very much one note and one body type and one look, and definitely wasn't perfect, right? So pageants need to evolve, obviously, as people evolve too. And there's no perfect pageant. There's no perfect leader. There's no perfect president of any organization. If you've ever been even the leader of a club, you know that the opinions are a dime a dozen, right? And it's much harder to get wisdom than an opinion. So can't even imagine being in this position. I don't want to own Miss USA. People ask me that all the time too. They're like, well, would you want to start your own pageant? I was like, heck no. No desire. You know how much money it takes and how much butt kissing it takes? If you've ever met me, you know that I'm just like not. I'd rather sit in my corner and give my opinion without it being broadcast all over, all that kind of thing. So not my cup of tea. So God bless the people that want to do the boozing and schmoozing, because that's just, I literally can't. I'm too like on or off, and I would probably say the wrong thing at the right time. So anyways, then in 2020, for the first time, FYI broadcast the competition because there was major money problems, and WME/IMG purchased it in 2015 till 2020. I think that was still technically underneath of them, but then FYI broadcast it instead of NBC previously, and then there was one other network that broadcast it for a while. That was my year. Does anybody watch FYI? The answer is no, and we should have just canceled it, in my opinion. We should have just postponed it till the next year, because it was a disaster, and I didn't even get to meet half my Miss USA sisters, and we had to sit by the same person every day for lunch, which luckily my people were cool. I mean, everybody was cool in my class, but you had to sit with the same two people for like 10 days, every single meal. And as soon as you were done eating, they were like, put your mask back on. It was horrible. We had to stand 6 feet apart from each other. And I was just like, what is even the point of us doing this? It was so bad. Like, it was so bad. So love it. Grateful for the experience, but it was not even really an experience. It was just like lockdown the whole time. So good on you, Miss America, for pivoting and for pinch hitting a year. That was smart of you. Okay, and then in 2022, JK and Global Group acquired the global pageant, everything from WME, IMG, and then it split. So now Miss USA and Miss Universe are no longer one entity anymore. And so, and part of the drama too is that during 2022, in the class of 2022, which, use their voices to stand up for themselves, in the Miss USA contract, a lot of people don't know that basically it says scoring doesn't matter. I'm paraphrasing this. So scoring matters but doesn't matter because ultimately the organization reserves the right to pick whoever they want for the pageant. So if they want to make sure the top 15 isn't full of a bunch of blondes, then great. They can pick boop, 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 and put people in regardless of your scores. So, and then on top of that, with Crystal Stewart owning the pageant, it made a lot of people mad because she's from Texas. She was on the Texas board. Then Miss Texas goes to win. If you don't know, when you're at Miss USA, there's press interviews and sponsors where people are carefully selected for each of these shoots. And if you're not selected for one of these shoots, it's very easy to get discouraged. And it is usually a clear indicator that you're not going to get in the top 15. And so what sucks is you're halfway through the week. You've worked just as hard as anybody to be there. And if you don't get selected for some of these shoots, it is what it is, right? And so, yeah, that's a whole other rant. So anyways, the scuttlebutt is that the Miss Texas, who would go on obviously to win Miss USA and Miss Universe, which, by the way, I'm not knocking anything that she's done. I think she works super hard. She's a brilliant fashion designer. I think she's a great Miss USA and Miss Universe. So nothing against her, but that having competed, that would suck, to feel like you knew who was going to win right from the beginning and that it was rigged in some capacity, which I'm not making an allegation for that. Just that's how the people felt. And so, yeah, so that's what happened. And then on top of that, there was, how do I want to say this, stuff going on with Crystal's husband, who allegedly invited girls to his hotel room, and there was a bunch of sketchy stuff going on of texting back and forth and just, let's just say, boundaries being crossed. Again, I say allegedly. There were screenshots, there were all these things. And so it was just a really bad year for Miss USA only 1 year ago in 2022. And so then there was an investigation, which quote unquote showed nothing. And Crystal stepped down and Layla Rose stepped in. So from there, you can imagine from that place, that's why Layla Rose has been cleaning house, which I hecka respect her for, because you don't want junk in your trunk when you're trying to bring a huge organization into a new era. So I appreciate what she's doing for pageantry and what she's doing for Miss USA. I think everybody had a great time competing this year, which is cool. From the looks of it and from the sounds of it, I think the girls got really close and just like actually had a good time. What a concept. We got to watch the election come in. That's what we got to do, and got a lecture about how if you voted for Trump, you were a terrible person. So that was fun. That happened to our class. And again, regardless, even if there would have been a discussion about if you vote for Biden, you're a terrible person. It's just like, why say that out of your mouth? Like, is that really necessary? Like, no, this is not what we're here for. We had to do early ballot. We had to do all these things, you guys. It was nuts. Anyways. And so I hope Miss USA is turning around. It is a little bit, I mean, if I was competing, I'd be really anxious because you're just putting your life on hold, obviously, kind of hoping for a future date. But my recommendation to kind of turn this on a positive is if I'm competing in Miss USA for a state pageant this year, I would just say stay ready. Like, prepare as if the first original date of when your pageant was supposed to be or when it was last year. Keep preparing like it's still that date, because when this stuff gets released and when Crystal decides to go ahead with the state pageants, it's going to be immediate. And it might be, February 1st. They're like, okay, yep, we're good. We got the approval. It's still February 10th. You would not be happy with yourself if you allowed yourself to slack for a couple months because you're like, well, there's not a pageant date. I have time. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, it's next weekend or something like that, because they very well could do that, because it's based on when the dates are available for the venues and everything. So stay ready, stay alert, stay on guard, stay in the gym, keep practicing, keep listening to these podcasts. And you're good. Don't worry. Everything's fine. I do think that overall, this is a good thing that we're kind of slowing down to speed up. I'm a huge advocate for that. You have to analyze everything going on in your business before you can really scale. Like, you've got to know what's going on. Sometimes you got to fire people. It is what it is. Like, it's just business at the end of the day. My final encouragement to you guys is that if you are competing for a USA state pageant, you are in the same spot as everybody else. Don't worry. It's not a personal attack. There's nothing against you. Everybody's in the same boat in literally every state, even the most pageanty of pageant states. So just hold on, keep the vision before your eyes of why you wanted to compete in this in the first place. And I promise you, it'll be okay. All right, guys, thanks for listening and watching. Subscribe to our YouTube if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next week.